Most people think firefighters are fearless, running into burning buildings, pulling strangers out of wrecked cars, walking straight toward things everyone else runs away from. But psychologists who study emergency responders have found something much more complicated, because the truth is, firefighters don't feel fearless. They just learned how to function while afraid. And the psychology behind that is something most people completely misunderstand. Have you ever noticed something strange about firefighters? After a call ends, they often go completely quiet. No celebration, no dramatic reaction. Sometimes they just sit there. And if the call was bad enough, they might make dark jokes about it. To outsiders, that can look cold, detached, even insensitive. But psychologists who study trauma in emergency professions say those reactions reveal something very specific about how the human brain survives extreme stress. The brain is trying to protect itself. When humans experience overwhelming events, the mind looks for ways to keep functioning, even if the emotions don't make sense yet. Silence can be one of those strategies. Humor can be another, not because they don't care, but because caring too much in the moment could make it impossible to do the job. In that quiet moment after the fire, researchers in trauma psychology and neuroscience have studied emergency responders for decades. One consistent finding appears across studies from organizations like the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health and Behavioral Health programs within fire service organizations. When people repeatedly face life-threatening situations, their nervous system adapts, not by eliminating fear, but by rewiring how fear is processed. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting danger, still activates, but experienced firefighters develop stronger regulation from the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and emotional control. In simple terms, their brain learns to say, "Fear later, work now." Psychologists call this process stress inoculation, and it's one of the reasons firefighters can function in situations where most people would freeze. But here's a question most people never ask. If firefighters train their brains to override fear, where does that fear actually go? Because the brain doesn't just delete emotions, it stores them, and sometimes it stores a lot. Firefighters operate in environments where the brain encounters something psychologists call repeated acute stress exposure. Burning structures, medical emergencies, car accidents, people having the worst moment of their lives. And unlike most jobs, there is no warning when the next crisis is coming. Your nervous system can go from completely calm to maximum adrenaline in seconds. Studies in occupational psychology show that emergency responders often develop something called hyper-vigilance. Their brain becomes extremely efficient at scanning for danger, which is incredibly useful on scene. But that same system doesn't always shut off when they go home. That's why many firefighters report things like automatically noticing exits in every building, scanning rooms without even realizing it, reacting instantly to certain sounds, struggling to fully relax in quiet environments. Their brain essentially becomes calibrated for emergency mode, not because something is wrong with them, but because their nervous system adapted to the environment it spends thousands of hours in. But here's the part nobody talks about. The hardest part of being a firefighter isn't the fire, it's the aftermath. Psychologists studying first responders have found that firefighters often carry what researchers call cumulative stress exposure. It's rarely one traumatic call. It's hundreds of smaller ones stacked together. The bad medical call, the house fire where someone didn't make it, the accident you can't forget. Each one leaves a small psychological imprint, and over time, firefighters develop coping mechanisms to keep functioning. One of the most common is dark humor. Research shows humor can regulate stress hormones and create emotional distance from traumatic experiences. Another is emotional compartmentalization. Firefighters often mentally separate work mode from their personal life. This allows them to perform under pressure without becoming overwhelmed. And then there's the strong social bonds inside the firehouse. Studies consistently show firefighters rely heavily on peer support, because the people in that station are often the only ones who fully understand what just happened, which is why many firefighters describe their crew as family. So when you see a firefighter sitting quietly after a call, or making a dark joke about something that seems serious, it doesn't mean they don't care. In fact, psychology research suggests the opposite. Those behaviors are the brain's way of protecting itself from caring too much at once. Because firefighters don't just face danger, they face other people's worst days over and over again. And the strange thing about psychology is that the behaviors people misunderstand the most are usually the ones that make the most sense once you look beneath the surface. a firefighter sitting quietly after a call, a dark joke in the firehouse, the constant awareness of every exit in the room. None of those are random. They're the result of a brain that adapted to survive environments most people will never experience. And that's exactly what we explore here, the psychology behind the behaviors people see every day, but almost nobody understands. If that kind of insight interests you, subscribe to Alpha Brain Theory, because the human mind is far more fascinating than most people realize. And we're just getting started.